Alright, so this week we're talking about Chapter 7, which is looking at Windows features and some of the tools, as well as a little bit of the networking. Okay, so this is the first section of Chapter 7, which is dealing with the Windows interfaces. Okay, so if you look, the Windows interfaces first off start by defining an operating system. Okay, an operating system is going to be the software portion that controls the computer. Okay, essentially it's going to act as the interface between the user and the computer to tell both of them how to interact and how to work together. Okay, so the first part of that are looking at the four main functions of the OS. Okay, so first off, like I mentioned, it kind of provides a user interface for the users to be able to actually make it useful for them, so it's easier to use. Okay, another way is that it manages files so that you can actually locate files easier. You can store them the way you want to and the way that makes sense to you. It manages the hardware, so that allows the actual computer components to interact with the software on the computer as well as with the user through the operating system. And then it deals with and manages applications. This is, for example, like Microsoft Word, Adobe PDF, let's see what else, Internet Explorer, things like that. Those are all applications that are going to run independently of each other, but interact with the operating system so that the user can use them. Okay, so Windows 8 is a feature. I'm sorry, it's an upgrade of the Windows 7. Okay, so we have with Windows 7 or with Windows in general, you have several different upgrades. Okay, so we'll go over this just real fast. Okay, so if you look at just the history of Windows, you'll see that they've had several different releases. Okay, and I should kind of put this disclaimer out there. I am not a Windows person. Okay, I recognize the fact that Windows is an industry and that it's the most popular OS used in businesses, but I'm a Mac person, so I'm going to tell you right now that if I make jokes and offend you about Windows, if you're a diehard Microsoft fan, I apologize up front. Okay, but they're just that, they're jokes. Okay, so first off, looking at this, we'll look at the different releases that came out. Okay, so we'll start off with Windows 5. Let me make this a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Okay, start off with Windows 95, then 98, then NT, then 2000, then Windows XP. I'm sorry, before XP was Windows ME, Windows XP, Windows Vista, and then Windows 7, Windows 8, and then the newest release is Windows 10. So if you're looking at all of these, one thing that you can kind of count on with Windows, and they've kind of laid this out, is that almost if you kind of look at all the different distributions they have, Windows 95, okay, that one was the first fully GUI interface, meaning that it had the mouse, you could use icons, you could use shortcuts, that kind of stuff. Okay, so being the first one, it had a lot of glitches, a lot of issues. Okay, so that one, that release, Windows 95, definitely not their best. Okay, Windows 98 had several improvements. It was a very solid operating system. The drawback to it was that it was designed specifically for client computers, for end users, everybody, home users basically. Okay, so when people started wanting to network these together and create just a larger network, 98 was not built for that. Okay, so Windows came out with Windows NT. NT, again, being the first network operating system that they created had a bunch of bugs in it, had a lot of background problems. Okay, so this one was not a very solid OS. It still worked fairly well, but it wasn't as solid as it needed to be. So then came Windows 2000. Okay, Windows 2000 was a good network operating system. It had both the desktop version for home users and a network version, so it worked really well. Okay, so then we got to Windows ME. Okay, if anybody was unfortunate enough to mess with ME, you know that ME was complete crap, basically. It was just a horrible OS, had tons of problems, and you notice it did not last very long. Okay, so that one's junk. Then we have Windows XP. Windows XP was probably one of the most, if not the most, solid operating systems released by Microsoft. Still used, even though they have stopped supporting it. They still use it in some locations, but very, very solid operating system. Then you have Vista. Okay, Vista was, well, you kind of see a trend going here, right? Vista was junk. Okay, so Vista again had tons of issues, and so we can just scrap that one here. Windows 7 is a really solid operating system. They built off the foundation of Windows XP, but they actually improved upon the mistakes they made in Vista to where it's a very solid operating system. Okay, so then we get to Windows 8. Okay, again, you should see a trend going here. Okay, so with Windows 8, they completely changed everything and geared it towards touchscreen. Okay, so if we follow the trend, you can kind of predict what kind of OS Windows 8 is going to be. Okay, so Windows 10, if you haven't seen that, we will get an opportunity in this class to look at it briefly, but it is a major improvement from Windows 8. It kind of combines both Windows 7 and Windows 8 into a useful operating system. Okay, so you can kind of see what happens within Windows. So that means, if they come out with a Windows 11, you can kind of expect what kind of OS that's going to be. So anyways, now moving on. In this image you see that the operating system here is actually going to again act as a mediator between the hardware of your computer, the application software, and the user itself. Okay, by doing that, it makes the computer more useful. Okay, without an operating system, we would still be running everything by having to type in programming code and stuff like that, which is not user-friendly by any stretch of the imagination. Okay, so looking at the different editions, okay, Microsoft does a pretty good job as far as laying out several different versions of Windows to kind of meet the needs of the home user, the business user, enterprise, and stuff like that. So Windows 8, we have standard Windows 8, we have 8 Professional, and 8 Enterprise, which are going to be geared more towards the business needs. Okay, and then Windows RT, which is going to be designed for those tablets and touchscreens. Okay, so it's a little bit lighter weight, so it'll fit on those, but you'll see RT running on your Surfaces and stuff like that Microsoft produced. Okay, and then a special note is that Windows 8.1 was released with basically all the kicking and screaming that came out with Windows 8. Okay, and what I mean by that is you'll kind of see in the interface here in a second. Windows 8 again completely changed everything and got rid of the booting up into the desktop, which everybody was used to. So plus it got rid of the start menu on the desktop, which of course that kind of freaked everybody out because every version of Windows prior to this has had the start menu. Okay, so Windows 8.1, basically that was the main upgrade, was that it added a start menu. Okay, and then you got Windows 7. Windows 7, you've got, we're actually going to start kind of from the bottom here, so let's start right here. Oh, sorry about that. You have Windows 7 Starter, which is a very basic operating system. Okay, it doesn't have all the bells and whistles. It's only available in 32-bit edition, so it's very basic. You got Home Basic, which is a little bit of an upgrade from Starter, but still lacking some of the features. Home Premium, which is kind of like the almost the elite for the home user. Okay, then you got professional and enterprise, which again is going to be geared more towards your business use. And then ultimate. Ultimate is essentially the best of both worlds. It takes all the features from enterprise and professional plus all the features from home premium and combines them into one operating system. Okay, obviously it's going to be the most expensive as well, but it still combines both aspects of home use and business use. Okay, so every Windows operating system provides what's known as a graphical user interface, and I kind of touched on this a second ago. Essentially, this means that you have the mouse to use and track items across the screen. You've got icons you can click on, that kind of stuff. The alternative is what's known as a command line interface, and that's where you have to essentially run command line through something like your command prompt. Okay, so that would mean like going in here and actually, looking at your folder contents and everything like that to try to see what's in your computer. Okay, so that one obviously is a whole lot more in depth. It takes a lot more of specific knowledge moving around.